Part 1. The most powerful person in the room says the least and moves the most. You think power is in the words, in the debate, in the argument that lands the hardest. But cold mind knows better. Power isn't in speech, it's in pressure. The person who speaks last doesn't win, the one who speaks less, but shifts the air when they do, controls the room. Because silence, when held with structure, isn't absence, it's leverage. The one who says nothing makes others over-explain. The one who doesn't react makes others second-guess. The one who withholds signal forces everyone else to chase interpretation. That's not passivity. That's manipulation. In its most precise form. You're not overpowering them. You're removing their ability to calibrate against you. And when they can't read you, they self-edit. They lean forward. They try harder. They recalibrate their tone. Not because you said anything, but because your silence shaped the frame before a word was spoken. You don't have to steer the conversation. Just remove your signal dash and watch the whole room shift. Part 2. They don't react to what you say. They react to what they think you meant. You've been trained to speak, to explain, to clarify, to be understood. Because you were taught. That influence is about articulation, that the better you say it, the more power you hold. But cold mind sees through the surface. People don't respond to what you say. They respond to what they think you meant. And when they can't tell what you meant, they start to guess, project, adjust. That's where the real control begins. Because now, you're not giving them a message. You're making them work for one. And the more they have to interpret, the more they reveal themselves. You didn't manipulate. You just didn't offer a script. And in the absence of script, they start overperforming. They speak more. They soften. They check your face for confirmation. They repeat themselves, hoping you'll nod. You're not silent because you're passive. You're silent because you know. Words create anchors. And anchors give people points of attack. Every sentence is a signal. Every signal is a commitment. And every commitment can be flipped, challenged, or decoded. So you don't give them that. You give them presence, stillness, a look, a pause, a lack of confirmation. And that pause creates pressure. Pressure forces calibration. Calibration leads to compliance, not because you demanded it, but because they're now inside your gravity, trying to decode something you never even sent. That's not mystique, that's tactical ambiguity. They're not reacting to you, they're dancing around the silence you architected. And that is how silent control begins. Part 3. The more you signal, the more you get captured. You want to be clear, director, transparent, because you were taught. That clarity is strength. But here's the truth. Cold mind sees. Clarity makes you readable. And what's readable becomes adjustable. The more you signal dash dash, with tone, with language, with emotional precision, the more someone can map you. And once they can map you, they can manage you. This is the loop. You speak with clarity. They decode it. They adjust their behavior. You read the shift. You respond again. And now, you're no longer leading. You're sinking. You think you're being understood. You're actually being processed. But cold mind doesn't let the room decode it. It lets the room search for it. Because when you withhold signal, People don't relax. They react. They second-guess. They fill in blanks. They start mirroring. And in doing so, they submit without even realizing they've done it. Not because you gave them a direction, but because you denied them a reading. This is the power of non-signal pressure. You don't say no. You don't say yes. You say nothing. And let their mind spin 1,000 simulations of what you might mean. That's not ambiguity. That's calculated absence. Because you're not afraid to be misunderstood. You're choosing to be unreadable. So the system has no script to project back on you. And when the system has no script, it can't lead. It can only follow. You don't manipulate by adding more control. You manipulate by removing the map dash and letting them follow weight instead of words. Part 4. Silent control. Loop, presence, withholding, pressure. You don't need to talk. To take control of a room, you just need to hold structure. While everyone else chases your silence, that's silent control. A 3-phase loop, that shifts behavior, without ever raising your voice. Here's how it works. Phase 1. Presence. The first manipulation is your existence. Not how you speak, but how you stand. Shoulders calm, eyes steady, movements minimal, stillness without retreat. This presence creates contrast, because most people vibrate, overexpress, leak signal. You don't. And that gap builds tension. They don't know why, but they feel it. You're not in their emotional loop, and that makes you dominant. Phase 2. Withholding. Now you're here, but you're not giving. No confirmation, no reaction, no reassurance. They speak. You listen, but you don't nod. You don't flinch. You don't offer anything that says, yes, you've reached me. This silence isn't emptiness. It's friction. Because in that vacuum, they project. They reach. They adjust their tone. They clarify. They repeat themselves. And you, still motionless. You've created a demand without ever expressing one. Phase 3. Pressure. Now the loop tightens. They don't know where you stand, so they try to stabilize the energy by becoming softer, more agreeable, more precise. They're managing the vibe you never volunteered to control. That's the final stage. Silent submission. They conform. Not because you forced it, but because you gave them. No foothold to lead from. Your silence became the only certainty. And when silence becomes the anchor, you hold the frame without ever lifting a finger. Silent control loop doesn't manipulate through noise. It manipulates through absence, through gravitational stillness, through signal denial. You didn't steer them. You just didn't blink. And they adjusted. When you withhold the signal, you don't lose the frame. You become the only thing they're trying to match. Part 5. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. They still shifted. He walked into the room, didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't warm up the vibe. He just sat, still, neutral, unmoved. The conversation continued. Light. Casual. Then someone looked at him, waiting for the usual nod, laugh, reaction. Nothing. They tried again. Right. You get what I mean. Still nothing. No disrespect. No eye roll, just stillness. And presence. so dense that people began to adjust. Their tone shifted. Their pacing softened. Someone rephrased their sentence. Just to make sure I'm being clear. No one told them to. No one asked. But his lack of feedback created a vacuum, and that vacuum pulled the room inward. They leaned forward. They re-explained. They waited for some kind of signal. He gave none. He wasn't being rude. He wasn't being cold. He was being impenetrable. He offered no surface for emotional leverage. And that made him the gravitational center, without ever reaching for it. By the end of the conversation, he had only said two things, both short, both exact. And when he stood up, no one remembered what they said. They only remembered how much. They adjusted to match his stillness. That silent control in motion. He didn't dominate. He didn't persuade. He didn't raise tension. He removed his signal dash and let the room collapse into the space he never filled. He didn't have to speak to move the room. He just didn't flinch when the room tried to move him. Part 6. Final message. Speak less. Hold more. Let the room shift first. You don't need to perform to hold power. You don't need to speak to shape direction. The most precise control comes from signal absence. Because when there's no script, they guess. When they guess, they adjust. When they adjust, you gain leverage without ever asking for it. This isn't passivity, it's silent posture. Most people talk to be seen. You withhold to observe. They express to connect. You pause to dominate. Because cold mind knows. The person who gives the least signal forces the most movement. And if they can't map you, they orbit you. Not because you pushed, but because your stillness made them flinch first. So speak when it builds gravity. And when it doesn't, let the room rotate until your silence becomes the loudest signal in the room. Transition to next video. In the next video, we'll decode the fortress mindset. How to build a life structure so internally strong that emotional intrusion becomes structurally impossible. Subscribe. Remove the signal. Let pressure lead.